Hi and welcome back to another session of Ask Alex. We're just right at the end of parliamentary recess for party political conferences. Obviously this week the Conservatives had their conference last week, Labour had their conference in Liverpool, and I attended the conference, spoke at a number of fringe meetings and was very actually pleased that a number of our shadow cabinet talked a lot about climate change and our plans for net zero growth, which means economic growth with no increase in carbon emissions. And actually we had Jeremy Corbyn here again yesterday in Leeds, making visits of flooding again, which is an issue, climate change related issue in terms of increased flooding incidences. And he also came to the university and I met him there at a great event actually with hundreds of students at the university and staff at the university, speaking to them. I've actually had a very busy conference recess. I've been to quite a lot of local organisations to their events. Last night I was at the Otley Pub Club, I've been in the Otley Chamber of Commerce. I did a session with the Guide Dogs for Blind that are based here in Headingley, where I was blindfolded, I couldn't see a thing, and I went for half an hour with a dog just to understand some of the difficulties actually around, particularly around street furniture and bins that blind people have when they walk their dogs, or when the dogs leave them. So I've done quite a lot of those things. We had quite an important strategic meeting earlier this week as well on transport, where we met with the Airport, Network Rail, LNER, Northern Rail and the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and I got a commitment from LNER that they would be running 6 trains a day from Harrogate all the way through to London via Leeds, and that when the new Leeds Bradford Airport Parkway station came in, that it would stop at that stop, which would actually help people from the constituency commuting into Leeds, and also would create a link to the airport from the region. Obviously people aren't going to travel all the way from Leeds Bradford Airport to London for connecting flights to Heathrow, but they would use, people from Doncaster and Wakefield would use that connection and other connecting stations to get to the airport, which is one of the biggest airports in the UK not to have any rail link, and that's an important part of the work I did, and I commit to that very early in my election, that we would get a rail link to the airport to improve connectivity. So that was quite a big breakthrough. I've also gone round and some other event. We had a great civic event on Sunday in Otley at the Bridge Street Church, where they'd hosted the Flower Festival. I went around and looked at the Flower Festival. They had a service to recommemorate a window which is 100 years old, which was commemorating the war and the sacrifice of the people in Otley, or the men, the young men that went to war, many of whom never returned. So I'm going to take some of your questions and then maybe reflect back a little bit on what's going to happen in Parliament and some of the other things that we've been doing in the constituency. So I've got one from Anna. What are you doing about First Bus Net unreliable service? Well, Anna, one of the other things I did this recess was we've had this ongoing issue in Yeadon actually around the cemetery, which is actually a little related to the airport, because it's people going to watch planes, particularly we had this military airplane. So we had a meeting to try and with the processing of Friends of Yeadon Cemetery, and I didn't have a car, so I had to go on the bus. So I had to go on the bus initially from Leeds, because we had another meeting in town, and then from town up to Yeadon on the 33A. The bus was meant to come at 1:54. The bus didn't come till 2:25, and we were a little late to the meeting about the Friends of Yeadon Cemetery because of the unreliable bus services. I also had another meeting this holiday, or this recess, where two services into town, number one service didn't arrive, and I was late again. So I've had that direct experience. At the moment I wrote to Brandon Jones about it, who's the managing director of First Bus. I'm waiting for a response still, but the short term is that we need to keep on top of First Bus. I'm going to keep carrying on the complaints, looking at the reliability, trying to press on them to improve their service. But the long-term solution is that we have regulation of buses like they do in London, and franchising of services, which will bring lots of improvements, not just about the reliability of service, the frequency of service, the times of service, but also it'll bring Oyster card style system or contactless system across all our public transport modes. So instead of having lots of tickets, lots of services, you can just use your card, tap in, tap out, how they do it in London, which is much better. Right, let's look at some of the others here. I've got one from Vincent. Hi, Vincent. LNR fantastic, infinitely better than Virgin everywhere. Are they sticking around as the government selling it off again? Well, it's an interim solution, according to Chris Grayling, who I don't have a lot of faith in, to be honest, as the Transport Secretary. But obviously, it is in the public domain. If we have a general election between now and when the government put it out to franchise, again, when they haven't got any immediate plans, and we get a Labour government, then obviously it's just going to stay public. And all of these, naysayers. What I have to say, actually, there's a lot of naysayers about cost of bringing the trains back into the public sector, back into public ownership. That actually, then you either wait for the service fair like the Virgin did and you bring it back, which the government have, and then they're in public, or you wait for the franchise to end, you just don't refranchise them, and then you come back and run them. And it's not going to be British Rail. There's a lot of negative stuff out there saying it's just going to be like British Rail. It's not going to be a single monopoly service like British Rail. There's going to be national services, regional services. It's going to be much more like the German or the French system, where you have different publicly owned companies running different sorts of services. You have that diversity of choice, and you have that competition, and it also looks at prices. And also, you will get competitor rail services, say through not-for-profits or regional, and so that, like, where, if we have devolution, Yorkshire Devolution or One Yorkshire could run its own train company, the One Yorkshire Train Company. Those are sort of things that we'd do, and it would create, that means that money wouldn't be creamed off for private profit, and the state wouldn't be subsidising private shareholders. It would all be invested into our trains, into our reliability. I've got one, it looks like it's from me, but actually it's from Chris Westwood. It's just got me at the top, and it says, the Tories, including the way they conduct themselves and their policies, and the I don't quite understand, the abomination is hereditary, providing Labour with open goal after everything. I get the feeling we aren't exposing them enough. The Labour aren't setting out their alternative policies clearly and powerfully. What are your thoughts? Well, very interesting. So Jeremy Corbyn was saying something similar to this yesterday, Chris, that Labour did better in the general election last year, 2017, because in a general election period, the media is tightly regulated and they have to give parity of coverage, and they have to, and there's a much less bias in the reporting. And Labour did a lot better because it became clear to people what our policies were, what we're intending to do, and actually the effective lack of policies or the rollback of policies that the Conservatives had to move. So, obviously, they went into the election talking about taxing people's houses for care, the so-called dementia tax. Not that I like that phrase, but that's what people knew it by. And that was deeply, deeply unpopular, and they rode back on that. While our policies that we brought out, we didn't row back on them. They were usually popular. Unfortunately, wasn't enough for us to win a general election. But I think that our next manifesto will build on the last manifesto. Actually, it'll just be more detailed, more entrenched version of that manifesto, looking more, hopefully, stronger on climate change. That is clearly what the conference was leading to, and that people will see that. And in that unbiased period, in the general election where it's more regulated, we will have that coverage, and we can make that move and hopefully move into power and deliver on those policies. And people can see actually that the Labour offer is the right offer for the country after 8 years of austerity, of cuts, of privatisation, including privatisation of our education system with things like free schools, and that we can actually have a more fair and equitable society with more say from people, and more say, and public service actually being run by the public sector. So I've got a couple of ones that have come in on email, which I'll just read, which won't be on your screen. What are you doing? Yeah, that's the same. I've got one about unreliable bus services from Robin Yeadon. I've covered that already. Do you believe Theresa May will end austerity? So in her conference speech, she said that the Conservatives will end austerity. Funnily enough, you might have seen the Daily Mirror yesterday, she said exactly the same thing last year in, I think, April or May 2017. So she keeps promising to end austerity. But if you are, and obviously until May this year, I was a Leeds City Councillor. If you're a local authority councillor, actually more or less anywhere in the country, you've seen what's happened in Northamptonshire, which is a Tory authority, but particularly actually in urban councils like Leeds and London boroughs, austerity hasn't ended. Cuts are continuing. They're absolutely decimated, actually, compared to where they were in 2010. And if you look at a whole range of services, the NHS, again, it's another thing where, it's been shown. She's saying there's more, there's 370 million more a week in the NHS. That's no reflection on what's happening in the NHS. You talk to any NHS staff working at Leeds Teaching Hospital Trust, working in primary care, there is clearly there is not enough money going into the NHS, and they have had austerity budgets, lost beds,